Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 104 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Today, Phil DeBella joins me on the program almost exactly 50 episodes over the previous time he was on at episode 56. Phil, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining me again. You're looking very healthy these days. A lot of training, you're doing really well. What have you learned, firstly, from having a lot more physical activity in your life?
Well, obviously through the whole coronavirus and the rest of it, it's given us more time to sit back and assess, but I've been getting stuck into the training. I've probably got to do that to balance out the increase in wine intake, but I've made sure that I've balanced out the extra training and just slowed some things down and really taking more time out for myself and family as well.
Fantastic. Obviously, the coronavirus is the elephant in the room. It's affected everything, and I'm sure it's affected most certainly some things that you've got going on just down the road from here in Bowen Hills. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. If we spin a bit of a more of a positive angle, how has the coronavirus shed a light on what you're doing and maybe some opportunities looking forward?
Yeah, look, I always talk about life in three areas: personal, family and professional. From a personal point, it's given me a lot more time with business being slower and obviously kids now schooling at home and all the rest of it. It's given me more time to sit back and slow down and assess what matters most. So it's been very positive from that side. The positives from the personal side is we realise how little we actually really need, and that's not just money, that's work-wise and all the rest of it, and it allows us to get more of harmony in our lives. So from a personal point, the positive that came out of it is to really assess what matters and what's important and what's relevant. A lot of things that I used to tell people, when they were asking for advice is make a list of the things that, obligations that you have, and then make a list of the resources you have and match the two. And where you see the loopholes, then that's where you need to focus your area of life. And it's something that I did in personal, professional and family, and was able to do a bit of a recheck, let's say, a stop, check and go. From a family point, well, of course, with the kids at home and schooling, it gave me a lot more time with the family and the kids and seeing what they're doing. And we have really brave and open and honest conversations in our household, and we allow the kids to obviously have, a say in what they do. And it was really interesting to see their perspective on how things are unfolding. And we don't watch a lot of news in our house and the rest of it. So from a family point, a lot more chatter. We played Uno every night after dinner. The first week was interesting with all the arguments and all the rest of it. But I heard we weren't alone. A lot of our friends played Uno and got into arguments as well, because people are cheating and looking over each other's shoulders and teaming up. But that was an interesting dynamic, but fun again. It forces you to do things you normally wouldn't do. We would normally eat out 4 or 5 times a week. We were cooking every night and eating as a family, and that's something that I really love, and we've continued. On a work front, well, things pretty much stopped, right? New York for us stopped, and the team over there have done an amazing job. Logan, who leads the team over there, kept battling away, spinning the Rubik's Cube. Everybody's done an amazing job, and now it's starting to come back. It'll still take a while, it'll take a long time, but things are back in motion. India, unfortunately, is still on hold. The government hasn't been as good as governments around the world. It's not making things easy. Obviously the sheer population and the demographic and geographic makes things difficult. And Rahul over there, my business partner, who's an amazing person and human, he's doing a really good job, but really challenging. And obviously we pray for them to get back online and make sure that things go well. And in Brisbane for us, well, people know I sold DeBella Coffee and left officially 2017. I was consulting and I finished that last year, and I've been mapping the new journey, but now I'll park that for the moment. Our property portfolio, obviously anyone that owns property knows, is not getting out of this any better. We obviously worked very closely with our tenants to give them rent reductions and freeze rent where we had to. You got no choice. Unfortunately, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody needs help, and we've done everything we can. And of course, given that landlords have got obligations as well with land tax and rates and bank repayments, and I don't think we're at the end of that. I think you're going to see a lot of people hurting in the next few months when everything gets tried to switch back on and the banks need to be repaid. And I think there's some really nervous people out there, and we're definitely wait and see. I mean, we're in a fortunate position. We've never overcapitalized on borrowings and stuff like that. But, I do feel for a lot of people that are going to be in position. And as I said, no one's coming out of this any wealthier. We're all going to take a slice and dice. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit there and whinge. Feel very grateful and fortunate to be in a good position. But I am nervous for a lot of people that are not as fortunate or are going to be in that position. So it's a wait and see. But in terms of the coffee business, I got the keys back to my building on 30 June 2020. We're now mapping out the restart and rebirth of a new concept.
Yes, very exciting.
Yes, it is. The Coffee Commune will officially launch February, March 2021. So we're taking a bit slower, which is unlike myself, but we're mapping it. It's unique, it's different, it's something nobody's ever done. We're putting 3 businesses into one. The actual business will be called the Coffee Commune. I'll say from the onset, it's not a coffee brand. And people obviously keep asking, are you starting a new brand? No, I'm not starting a coffee brand. It is not a coffee brand. It's a facility. It's a place where people come to collaborate. So the brand promise is where the coffee community comes to collaborate.
Yes. I don't mean to interrupt you there, Phil. I want to flesh it out for those who aren't as informed about the coffee industry, some business professionals or professionals in other areas across the supply chain. Why does the coffee industry need this?
Well, the problem we're going to solve is very simple. I think 30% or a third of businesses, cafes and restaurants won't get through this period. And those that will and have so far are going to need to adjust and have adjusted. It really has changed things. And the short of it is, in order for people to survive in this industry, we've got to work out a way where we can help them be profitable, efficient, and sustainable. And that's going to be the key. Those 3 things is people are going to need to be efficient. And that's in terms of how big their shops are, in terms of square meter, try and get the rent down as low as possible, in how many staff they need, so down to opening hours and all the rest of it, down to menu design and all of those areas to try and get costs down. And that's the efficiency, which then breeds to profitability, which then breeds to sustainable. So if they're not efficient, they can't be profitable. And if they're not profitable, they can't be sustainable.
Everything you mentioned there was on the retail end, and you obviously deal across and up that supply chain. From what I'm aware, this concept also deals up the supply chain as well. How's that tying into the bigger picture around the Coffee Commune?
Great questions. What we're trying to do is have a full length approach, so wide and deep rather than go shallow and narrow. What we're doing is we're bringing in our international coffee traders business, which is the green bean, which is a major ingredient to obviously the coffee industry. We're bringing in a new concept called the Coffee Alliance, where people can come and roast their own coffee, or we'll roast for them. And that means roast your own coffee whether you're at home, so you're doing a kilo a week or a kilo a fortnight, right through to chains and groups that want to manufacture big volume. And then the third part, which is completely unique and never been done before, is a coffee chamber of commerce. And the coffee chamber of commerce is about the whole industry, from plantation right through to consumer. And what we're doing it is a membership base. So you'll have a coffee enthusiast, which is your retail clients and people interested in coffee. You'll have a barista's membership, you'll have a cafe owner's membership, a roaster's membership, and a supplier's membership. And what we're going to do with those memberships is the basis of it is people coming to do business with each other. And the second part of that is education. So if you're a member, you're invited to all the events that happen, between 3 and 5 events a week, around things from like how to read a spreadsheet, how to read a P&L, how to plan for your super, how to make sure you got the right planning done for your shop fit out, renovations, anything you can imagine in our industry. So we're trying to go right across the industry. But the basis of it is education. Because what I've found over many years of myself being in this industry is the intentions are always good of people. Most people, obviously, their intentions are good. Whether it's a supplier, whether it's a roaster or a barista, their intentions are good. But often the execution becomes poor. And that's because of lack of education. So what we want to become is a hub where people can come and learn more and be proactive rather than reactive. So, you know, that we're calling it memberships at the commune, which effectively is a coffee chamber of commerce, is what we're doing is we want people to come and learn more before they actually do things so that they know. So they've got a proactive approach. So we've teamed up with Brisbane City Council. They'll be running free courses. Of course, you remember, you come along for nothing, on what are the permits you need before you open a cafe? You know, what's your outdoor dining fees? What does food safety look like? Or before you actually open. So for those that don't know much about finance, which a lot of them don't, they might be a great chef, they might be a great maitre d', they might be a great barista, but do you know how to read a P&L? Do you know about cash flow? Do you know how to register your IP? Do you know how to make sure you've got the right trademarks if you need any trademarks? All this sort of, are you registered right for tax purposes? Are you paying people the right wage, which is a big one in our industry? Absolutely. Because there's a big issue in our industry about underpayments and wrong payments. And again, a lot of them is because they don't know the laws. And you'll find that a lot of them, because it's quite complicated and something the consumer won't know, is that after 7 o'clock at night, there's a different rate. After 10 o'clock at night, there's a different rate. And yeah, don't get me wrong, there are those that their intentions are bad and they do the wrong thing. But a lot of people that get caught up in the missed payments actually don't know, because there's so many different laws around changing. So we're working with people like Found You, where it's automated and it does it all for you. So you punch the person's employee details, they thumbprint in, they thumbprint out, and you can't get it wrong because the system does it all for you. So we're working with solving problems. And when I started Debella in 2002, it was all about revolutionizing the industry by making coffee, taking it from a product industry to a service industry. And I think we did that really well, and that was the backbone of the Debella success. In this business, what I really want to do is bring the whole industry together, is a collaborative approach to the industry. Because coffee's at a level now where it's pretty good. The coffee in this country is pretty pretty good. Yeah, you've got some baristas that make it bad or cafes destroyed, but the coffee standard is exceptional compared to what it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Absolutely. And competes internationally.
Totally, and we lead the way. So differentiating with your product is not as strong or as clear now to win business versus really knowing what you're doing. And you can tell those that have come through COVID that know what they're doing. They know that they had to make their premises smaller. They know they had to readjust their hours. They knew they had to target a new audience. They knew they had to price things differently. And COVID's just sped that up. It's shown those, and then it showed the ones that just gave up. Yeah, so the whole COVID thing has shown us where the gaps are in the industry and what problems we can solve. And as I always say, it doesn't matter what industry or business you're in, if you're not solving a problem, you're not relevant. And if you're not relevant, you can't be sustainable.
Is this a new problem that you've found? Is it a new problem that has emerged over time? Or have your interests just changed?
No, look, it's something that I've seen, probably saw obviously through running DeBella, and it probably came across my table, if you had to put a date on it, probably around 5 years ago. I'm always looking futuristic. I'm always looking ahead and going, what are the problems? What's happening? It really highlighted to me about 2-3 years ago when I saw that a lot of businesses were starting to close their doors. And more importantly, those that closing their doors, they didn't need to. And you're trying to identify why they closed their doors. Where was the actual problem? And when you look at it, it was lack of education or lack of being, they were reactive rather than proactive. You know, I saw businesses closing down that were actually trading well, but couldn't cope with problems they had 12 months ago.
Yes.
So had they coped with the problems 12 months ago, they should never have closed down. Or find a new way to cope with those problems that happened 12 months ago, because right now you're trading quite well. So over the years of gathering, and my thing's always been around, it's not what I think that works. You know, the problem's got to be, you can't just solve my problems, I've got to solve other people's problems.
Yes.
And it's no different to when we started DeBella Coffee. You could buy coffee from anywhere, but back then it was good, it was crap, or it was amazing. And there wasn't a lot of amazing coffee. But like I said, now, the majority of coffee now is very good. There's a lot of amazing coffee and there's only little bad coffee. And for argument's sake, to put a stat on it, you know, when I started in 2002, about 50% of coffee was being imported from Italy. Segafredo, Lavazza, all these brands were quite strong. If you look at it now, the ones that are strong are now manufacturing in Australia,
yes.
Which Segafredo is manufacturing in Australia, Lavazza is manufacturing in Australia. They've had to change their business model, right? And if you look at it, and I've used the coffee industry, because everybody in the coffee industry has done a remarkable job. No matter how big or small, they've done amazing. And again, I base that on data, not opinion. And the data is, the coffee industry should actually be a case study for government when it comes to manufacturing, because we are one of the few, if not the only industries that went from being majority imported, and I'm talking 40, 50 years ago, to in the last 50 years being majority manufactured here. Not even 10% of our coffee would now be imported, and I mean finished product. Not even 10% of our coffee consumption would be imported from other countries. But if you looked at 40, 50 years ago, it'd be the other way around. 10% was manufactured in Australia, 90% was imported.
And that's obviously a big argument at the moment globally, the nationalisation of a lot of industries as well. So it's interesting to hear that come up as something, as an argument for the coffee industry as a model. Phil, this is obviously a huge undertaking, a huge operation. How long do you think it's going to take to solve this problem?
Oh, look, I don't think you'll ever solve it completely. I mean, what we'll do is it's one brick at a time, one person at a time. I mean, we're already connecting suppliers to coffee roasters and saving them money. We're already connecting suppliers to cafe owners to save them money. Because, I mean, for argument's sake, we did it the other day where we gave somebody a bread supplier and said to them, look after this customer, yeah, and they're saving them $200 a week. Now, if they can save $200 a week on bread and $200 a week on their meat supply and, you know, $100 a week on their coffee supply, it all adds up. And people say, do you take a rebate? No, well, that's why the membership model. The supplier pays us $2,000 a year. The cafe owner pays us $1,000 a year. And that's how we get paid. But the cafe owner is now all of a sudden making that money back in the first month.
Yeah.
You know, and that's our goal. If I can't deliver value. So the way I would deliver value to the members is through education and saving money. And again, like I said, no kickbacks or rebates. So we've thought about the model very closely. I mean, because it's quite new and different, we'll have to pivot. There'll be things that don't work. We'll have to change. But the thing that I always make sure I do is I build it from the outside in. So constant discussion with suppliers, constant discussion with members. Members will be part of, obviously, the strategy because it's theirs.
Yes.
So what I want to build is the brand is the Coffee Commune. And that Coffee Commune has to be like a movement that belongs to its members, to
Yes.
the people. And why? Because they're going to see value. You know, what's their why? Well, they're going to become efficient, which means they become profitable, which means they become sustainable.
Do you see it very much being Brisbane operated, or is it a national brand?
Well, the concept's global.
Yes.
However, What I want to do is execute here locally in Brisbane, proud Brisbane boy, and everyone knows that, even though we were biggest in Australia and what we did like for like, our head office was always Brisbane. I want to set it up and own the Brisbane one, but it is something that we will look at licensing into other states and definitely globally. I mean, there already is interest there of people that have heard about what we're doing, because again, what problem does it solve? Like you take somewhere like South Korea who love their coffee, or China who are starting to get into coffee, or India who are starting to get in. The concept of the Coffee Commune means that you could have 50 to 100 roasters working out of this premises, which means you don't need 50 to 100 other retail premises, right? Which saves them money. Yeah. So we've worked out it's about 100 to 150,000 a year we will save the small coffee roaster. They don't need a premises, they don't need equipment, and in some cases they won't even need a coffee roaster because we can do it for them. Or if they can come and use the equipment, do it themselves. It solves a big problem in terms of space around the world. Yes. Where places where there's a lot of population, little space. The next one is education. A lot of these countries are emerging. So China's emerging. South Korea is actually quite advanced. India's emerging. So the concept of bringing this all together enables to build people's education, from cafe owners to roasters to suppliers and all the rest of it. So we're expecting a lot of interest, and as I said, we've already had some people reach out, but we'll be expecting a lot of interest, say, within 3 to 5 years of taking this globally, and I'll do it through a license deal. I don't want to own it myself. I don't want to be in there running it, and I've made it very clear. My family's made it clear to me. My 12-year-old daughter and my son have given me the parameters and said, Dad, you only work school hours, remember? Yeah. That's why you sold to Bella. And so the two things for me to make sure, and I get reminded by my wife, and I remind myself all the time, is health first and then family. And then obviously the Coffee Commune, because it is important. I don't want to go back to being heavily overweight and traveling 3 weeks a month. So they're the parameters. And it's a good key for anybody starting business at any level. And whether it's your first or your 100th, always set the parameters. So always set your vision and set your parameters. And that's what I've done. So the vision's very clear. It's about building something where the coffee community collaborates. But my parameters are, first, to make sure I don't put on weight, and 2, that I don't travel 3 weeks a month when my family doesn't see me. And I hope that's helpful for the listeners.
Just to flesh out that component there around roasters coming together and utilising that space, is it essentially a similar sort of model to ones that we've seen there are a couple in Melbourne that I know of, Bureau, Tim was on the program back a little while ago in the 90s. Is it a similar sort of model, like a co-working space for roasters?
Yeah, look, again, we don't claim that that's unique. What part of that is unique is that we don't have our own brand. So no one can walk in and say, I want Phil DeBella's coffee. There is no Phil DeBella's coffee. And the difference is that the IP sits with you. So it's your recipe. We can build it for you. You can build it yourself. You can bring your own green beans. So some of the models you'll see out there is some of them won't allow others to bring green beans. You've got to buy from them. We don't care if you bring your own green beans. Others will have a model where they say, we own the IP. No, it's your IP. And then others will do all that, but they also have a competing brand. So
it's obviously conflict of interest.
Totally.
Huge.
Well, I don't like the concept of conflict of interest, because if you say that, everything's a conflict, because whether it's your brand or somebody else, doesn't matter who owns it, it's a collaboration. So at the moment you get collaboration, you've got conflicts if you look at it that way. It's just that conflict exists regardless of how you view it. Conflict's all about how you see it in your mind. But what makes it different is it's not so much about the conflict of interest, it's where your awareness goes, your energy flows. So if I allow 50 roasters to use my premises, and then I've got my own, well, I'm going to push my own first. Whereas if I don't have my own brand and I've got 50 roasters, I'm pushing 50 roasters. It's unique and different in the way that it's completely transparent. It's costed transparent. You don't have to buy your green beans from International Coffee Traders to then use the Coffee Alliance to then be a member. You can just be a member and not use anything else, and come along to events and use the training rooms that are going to be available. So like people say barista memberships. Well, a $500 a year barista membership allows the barista to use our training rooms anytime. So they can go and build their own courses, bring people in and charge them, so they can use it as a venue. And we're talking about, there'll be a Wager room in there, there'll be a Slayer room, there'll be a San Remo room. These guys have all come on board to be part of this. We're talking about state-of-the-art equipment people can work on, they can bring their own coffee, they can use coffee that's there. There's boardrooms they can hire the whole function space if they want to do product releases. We're talking a complete facility costing millions and millions of dollars that people can engage with and be part of. And we're not being used as an event. Downstairs will be open to the public with a full-blown kitchen. We want to bring in guest chefs. We want to bring in my mum to teach people how to do mama style cooking. So, we're going to be doing different sort of stuff, and it'll be supply and demand. It's the one thing I've always worked at is I don't like push strategies. I don't like pushing things down people's throats. I like pull strategies. We create a product that emotionally engages with someone so that they want to come and use it. This facility is not going to be for everybody. Some people are going to hate the idea. Some people are going to think, no, I'm going to be secretive and I don't want to be co-working space and collaborate. That's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's not there that everyone has to engage with. But I can tell you that it's going to solve a problem for a lot of people. It's going to help the average small roaster, where 90% of roasters in this country are under 1,000 kilos a week. It's going to save them $100,000 to $150,000 a year.
And they may even, we can't predict these sorts of things, but there could be a scenario that it occurs in there where a couple of roasters come together and say, hey, look, let's actually join together. Like,
yeah, of course.
This could be something that we do together.
Of course. And the other concept that I'm playing with at the moment is to actually have an in-residence where roasters can say, you know what, I don't need anything. I don't even need an office. I'm going to come and rent an office space and be in-resident at the commune. So that's something that we're also toying with at the moment too, because we've got the office space to do that. And that really saves people a lot of money, right? Because then they're in resident or satellite offices where people can, like San Remo, they've got to have an office in Brisbane. Well, now they don't have to go and spend a fortune on a showroom and all that. The cost here is minimal for them to be part of it. They're going to be in resident and they're going to have their audience at their feet. They're going to have baristas playing with their machines. They're going to have cafe owners seeing their equipment. There's other roasters, suppliers, it's all there. And then they can use the venue as they please to create their own stuff. The world is endless, and like I said, I've got a very clear vision, but one thing I've always done is I stay fluid, because the business isn't about me. The business is about solving problems for the customer. So I always work from the outside in. And as the problems present and we see them coming through, we go, right, yeah, we need to build a solution for that. Well, hey, that's not working because they want it done differently. And that's something that people don't understand. Those that never research the DeBella model would never understand it. They'll make innuendos and stupid comments. The DeBella model was unique because it was the first company to take a product business to a service business. It was the first company to completely deliver amazing service to its customers. And that's what the customers will tell you, not what I'll tell you. You speak to our customers, that's what they'll say. They care, they look after us, they're supportive, they're there. No matter how big we got, they could ring me directly if they needed to, and things got done. But that took a lot of work to run that level, that intensity. It also meant that you had to have amazing people, and 98% of my team were amazing. So we had an amazing brand because we had amazing people, we had amazing customers. All I was the conductor, it wasn't me. I had an amazing group of people and amazing customers.
And that's the art of running a good business, or building a good business, is finding incredible people to join the team. A lot about what you talk about is having strong education and culture and that sort of passion, and you emanate that every time you speak. How do you develop that strong culture of openness within the team?
It's all about values for me. So I value authenticity, and I'm known for it. If I've got something to say, I say it. And if someone's got something to say to me, say it. I say to people, I don't want to hear it from somebody else. You tell me. I have no problems if you tell me, right? Because I'm not going to be the most liked person in the room all the time. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, right? But I'm going to tell you what I think, and you might not like it. But the key word behind it is intention. My intention is not to ridicule anyone. My intention is not to put anyone else down. My intention is always, I like to be in a position of helping people accelerate their potential. And I've always taken that. And what flows on from that is I'm a people person. So one of my passions is actually people. My passions are actually people, opportunity, and education. It doesn't say anything there about coffee or entrepreneurship or money. My passion is actually people, opportunity, and education. So I always understand that everything is about people, right? And getting the best out of yourself and getting the best out of others and helping them get the best out of themselves. And it always comes from that position. DeBella Coffee was about helping the cafe owners make money. Now it's about the industry making money. So you see how my philosophy hasn't really changed that much. Yeah, it's always about helping an external party, because if you do that, then success becomes a byproduct.
Yes. To just take one little step back there, we won't talk too much about DeBella because you're obviously not involved with them anymore. As things grew when you were building, how did you take part in that recruitment process? Did you always have your finger on the pulse with who was being recruited, or did you let go of that function to someone else that you trusted to pick the right people?
Yeah, no, good question. I gave up driving that function very early. As soon as we started to get, I think, to about 10 or 12 people, and we ended up with 110. But when we got to about 10 or 12 people quite early on, I gave that function up. And the reason I did is I want people to work with people. So I would actually design the seat of the bus. My job would be to design the organisation. I would then write down the values and the skills. So I'd write down 2 lists. The values, 3 to 5 values of what I wanted in those people, and 3 to 5 skill set that they had to have. Then I would give it to the team leader of whatever department was being hired, and they would actually do the hiring. But I always met the person before they officially started. And I met every single person before they officially started. So no one started in my organisation without me meeting them and having a chat, whether it was over the phone, whether it was through FaceTime if they were interstate and I couldn't get there. But I always wanted to meet them because to me, I hire an attitude and teach skill. But I gave the power to the people because they're the ones that are working with them. And what happens when you do that is, one, it shows them trust, it shows them engagement, but it allows them, because they have to work with them every day, to see what you won't see. So somebody can be nice and great to me for 10 minutes, an hour, but when somebody's got to sit there and work with somebody in a team, they're going to pick it up pretty quickly. And they're also going to be more tolerable because they're the ones that actually did the hiring. So I gave that function up very, very early, but I always met everyone.
How did you know, though, that those team leaders would be identifying the same definition of the value that you wrote down for them?
Well, because they followed the same process when they were hired. I would ask them the same questions. I said to them, I don't care about your resume, because you can get a great person to write your resume and it reads well. So I used to ask them questions such as, what matters to you? Tell me something that I'm going to love about you. Tell me something I'm going to hate about you. Tell me where you're going to be in 12 months. Tell me where you want to be in 3 years. Life questions. And you find that when you're asking people these life questions, if they know themselves, they've got answers. And it doesn't matter what the answer is, as long as they know. Those that have no idea, well, I knew, well, if you had no idea where you want to be in 12 months, you're not going to help me get to where I want to be. And when I say to you, what am I going to hate about you? And you say, oh, nothing, you love me, then I know you're not going to be right for the organisation. So it's simple questions, but it's conversations. And I think what's happened in the world over the last 10, 15 years, especially the last 10 years, when so much more resources and technology, and everyone forgets the basics. People forget to just have a conversation. You know, we do it with our own families, we do it with our own children, we just stop and have a conversation. And that's something that's, again, I've always been good at, but it's reminded me through COVID, have more meaningful conversations.
Listeners will be thinking, yes, I know what a meaningful conversation sounds like, but how do you articulate how to get into a meaningful conversation? How do you get into something deeper than just a conversation that most people would just have?
Yeah. Well, questions. Questions are always good. But the 3 words that stick out to me always around conversations is purpose, relevance, and authenticity. So what's the purpose of the conversation? Is it just niceties? Is it to solve a problem? What is it? Relevant. Well, if I'm not talking about things that are relevant to you and you're not talking about things relevant to me, it doesn't really go anywhere, right? And then authentic, keep it real. So to me, those 3 key words is how you have a meaningful conversation. A meaningful conversation has a purpose. It's relevant to both parties or to the party. I mean, if you're the one having a problem and the purpose is that you need my advice, and the relevance right now is about solving a problem for you, then I've got to do that with authenticity.
You did a negotiation course with Harvard.
Yes.
Yeah. Does that tie in there? Do you take some principles from that into conversation, or does it apply more specifically to negotiation tactics?
No, look, well, negotiation is a conversation. You can't have a negotiation without a conversation. But specifically around negotiation, it's about a zone of possible agreement. That's the first thing they got. And I got taught by Jim Zavinius, who's one of the best in the world. He works with Estee Lauder and does all their sales and mergers, acquisitions. And he said 2 things that really, really stand out. And listeners, you know, grab a pen and paper and jot this down, because this is coming out of one of the best guys in the world. The first one is ZOPA. Zone of possible agreement. It's the distance between your best possible scenario and your worst possible scenario. So understand what your best possible scenario is and your worst possible scenario. The next one is all about every discussion, conversation happens around one of these 3 things: rights, power, or interest. So rights, power, or interest. So even this discussion we're having now that we're recording for your listeners, I'm not sitting here, and I'm very conscious to make sure I'm not sitting here because it's my right to be whoever I want, or because you're interviewing me, so it's my right to tell you what I think. I'm not sitting here going, I've done well in life, so I've got the power. I'm sitting here in what they call interest. So when I'm answering your questions, or when I'm thinking, and the purpose of me doing this is, what's in the best interest of the listeners? What is it that I can share with them that's going to interest them so that they get something from it? And if you keep all conversations at an interest level and tie it back to relevance, purpose, and authenticity, then it's going to be a meaningful conversation. And that's the Harvard part. That is just so powerful. And I've done a lot of consulting for some powerful businesses where I say to them, do you have your discussions around the rights, the power, or the interest? And a lot of them, when they break it down and analyze it, they go, shit, anytime we've had a problem, it's because it's about rights and power. And that's the first key to communication and meaningful conversations, or winning a negotiation, or getting the deal you want. Don't make it about rights and power. Yes. And it's something I've learned about being a father. The days of when my dad used to say, you do this or you're going to cop one across the head, are gone, right? That's power. I'm inflicting my power. Now, for a Sicilian man 30, 40 years ago, that works. Yes. It's not going to work today.
My family's European as well.
So you understand where I'm coming from. Now, the other one is about my right. I'm your parents. It's my right to tell you what to do. Might only get a certain level. However, what we try and do, as hard as it is, and all parents would agree, is to try and keep the discussion with our children at interest. What's in your best interest and what's in my best interest? And I see that unfolding with children because the children are very intelligent. That's why they learn quicker. They're highly intelligent. So keep the discussion at interest level, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's even in yourself. Try and keep those discussions at interest level and you will effectively have meaningful conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Phil. There was a lot in there. To step back just a little bit further, if we think more broadly, I know we've been talking about a broad array of concepts. If we step back and look at maybe a 2 to 3 or 5 year period, what are some trends that you think, or rather some elements across the business world that are going to get more attention that have previously been under-acknowledged?
Yeah, look, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but two of them that really stand out is people are going to need to be more educated. So you are going to know more. And as Griffith University says, when you know more, you can do more. That's one that really stands out is it's not going to be enough to know a little about a lot. You're going to find that people are going to need to know a lot about as much as they can. So knowing more about finances, knowing more about products, knowing more about service, knowing more about people, all of these things, the opportunities are going to come by knowing more because that does two things. One, the more you know, the more you can do. And two, knowing more saves money because, well, you make less mistakes, but for argument's sake, if you know how to read a lease, you don't have to give it to a lawyer. Lawyers, that might save you from $500 to $5,000. And that comes down to that efficient, then become profitable, then become sustainable. The next part that I really see trending, and I think is based off our model, is going to be across industries, is you're going to see shared workspaces. It used to be, WeWork led the way in the world with office space. That's going to change again because people like lawyers and that didn't like people working from home now go, geez, they can work from home. So I wouldn't want to be owning office buildings in the city and stuff like that because the demand's going to drop down. People will go from what they call tier 1 office space to tier 2. They won't need as much space. But the trend really that's going to happen, because property goes in ebbs and flows, normally 7-year cycles, is going to be shared workspaces. And what I mean by that is things like hairdressers. Where all these hairdressing salons are going to be popped up, I think you're going to start seeing in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a big salon that is made up of, say, 10 hairdressers working out of that space that own their own little business. I think you're going to see more big mixed business come back. Yes. I think you're going to see a lot more little espresso bars that now sell fruit and veg or that sell fresh meat. And that's going to be off the back of retailing where the Europeans don't go to the supermarket to buy everything. They go to the butchery to buy butcher, they go to the tobacco store to buy cigarettes, the bread maker. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the next 3 to 5 years, supporting locals. And that's where it needs to be. And hopefully it transcends to people really supporting locals and supporting Australia, spending our money here first where applicable. That's going to be a trend, I think, that's going to take off further and further and further. So, to recap it, 3 things: education, so know more about what you're doing. 2, shared workspaces are going to be big across different industries. And 3, local, being a lot more conscious where we buy and where we spend our money, and especially being conscious about helping local people first.
To fill out 2 of those things there, is there anything in particular that you think has been under-acknowledged that is going to get more interest, more education in that space?
In terms of in our industry, it'll be things like finances and legals, where before you relied on your accountant, you relied on your lawyer, and every time you do that, you've got to pay them, or some of them just can't find good lawyers and good accountants, right? Yes. That area definitely. So you'll see, I've seen baristas charge in and open their own cafe, but no idea how to read a profit and loss. Yes. That's not going to happen in 3 years. If you don't know how to read a P&L, you're not going to happen. I mean, I've got a shop, for argument's sake now, to give you an idea to flip it. I've got a fully functional, ready to go cafe restaurant in a great spot with cheap rent in East Brisbane that we've had lots of people apply that are first time business owners. And I won't rent it to them because they're first time business owners. And what I mean that they're first time business owners that don't have the right knowledge and they don't have the funds behind it. Anytime you open a business, and they get the fit out for nothing. But if you don't have $50,000 to $100,000 in the bank to get you through that first 6 months, then you can't open that business. Now, I'd be an idiot to give it to you and know that you're going to fall over in 6 to 12 months. Yeah. So I don't. But if someone comes along and they're a first timer and they've got the money in the bank and they've got the education because they say, look, hey, I've got 15 years experience managing a cafe or managing a restaurant, I've got my money in the bank ready to go, then I'll give it to them. Yes. So using that as a practical example, because a lot of landlords are going to be following that model. They're not going to give businesses to people unless they're prepared. And the preparation they're going to look for is education. They've got the finances behind them. But they're going to want to know what they're going to do with the space too. Because if you're going to go into a place and just run a cafe, well then you don't need, this is a 150 square metre shop. You don't need 150 square metres. Go and rent a 50 square metre shop, keep it small, and away you go. So I'm just trying to give both sides of the ledger there for listeners to understand as an example. And that's what I mean by education. Now when you talk about other industries, well, it doesn't change. It starts with a business idea. You need to register the business idea. You need to have proof of concept. You need to have products, and it flows down. But you'll find that people that open business know a lot of that, but they don't know the finance and the legals.
Yes.
And that's where specifically, you asked me to be specific, knowing more about finance and legals. Doesn't mean go and be a lawyer, go and be an accountant. You still need a good accountant, you still need a good lawyer, but you're going to need to know more about that stuff.
Thank you for filling that out a little more, Phil. The second thing there as well, on the property side, do you then see commercial property crashing? And I guess you've obviously balanced your portfolio, your own portfolio, to account for that as well. Do you see that crashing, or do you see it more just changing shape with these co-working spaces within certain industries? And do you see more of a shift to residential property? How do you sort of see that?
There's a lot of different things. Let's break it down. That's right, let's break it down. Commercial, landlords have had it pretty good for many years, right? And I'm one of them. We've had it pretty good. I've always been very fair with our tenants. So let's take the elephant out of the room to start with. No one ever thinks they're getting a great deal. I'll break that cycle and say, you know what? If I'm getting 5 to 7% return on my money, I'm happy. Whereas in Queensland, people have expected 7 to 10% return over the years. That's not going to happen. Right? What's going to happen now is 5 to 7% return. And I'll use our industry again. I talk data and facts. I don't talk opinions. When you're doing your budgets, most people used to work off 10% rent in hospitality. I now tell them work off 7%. Right? You ideally want to be at 5, but if work off 7%. So that's going to shift. And that means the landlords that want to be charging more than 7% return are not going to rent their spaces out, or they're setting their clients up for disaster. And you'll see the Westfield model. Westfield used to be up to 22, 23%. They're down to 15 to 17% that they charge because they don't have the traffic flow. So that a landlord's going to have to work out a way to still get their 7% return, or 5 to 7%, but make it sustainable for the tenant. And how will they do that? A lot of them will make the spaces smaller. You know, if it's a 150 square metre shop, cut it down to a 50 and 100 square metre shop, you know, which I'm prepared to do at East Brisbane. Stuff like that. You know, I'm not getting technical, but I want the listeners to actually take something away from it out of that interest discussion. The thing that drives landlords is not greed and this, you know, big space. It's a percentage return. And the percentage return of what they need is normally double what the interest rate is. So if the interest rate's 3.5%, which is currently what it's at, 3.5%, 4%, then they're looking for 7 to 8% return. It's a numbers game. That's what they need to actually make it sustainable.
Just to fill that out, why is it double? Is there something in there? Obviously, there's a lot of costs.
Well, double because you've got your rent and then you've got your expenses.
Is that a rough figure?
It's a rough figure, because if you're not getting that, the banks won't give them the money to buy it. So it's just so that the listeners can have a solidified model on roughly what it sits at. And of course, for COVID, well, some of us are getting nothing. And so be it. That's the way it is. But it costs us money, right? Because if you're getting 7% return, your interest rate's 4%, that's not enough to be putting money aside. Because don't forget, then you've got repairs and maintenance on your buildings and stuff like that. There's a lot of hidden costs. So the future of it's going to be smaller footprints. It's going to be about smaller footprints. And what I say to people that are opening a cafe, can you take the same money with 50 square metres as what you can 100 square metres? Because if the answer is yes, and most of the time it will be, then take 50 square metres, not 100, because you've already got rid of one of your expenses. The moment you make your footprint smaller, you need less staff. And wages is the biggest expense. On a percentage, right? Wages are 35 to 40%, if not 45 sometimes. So if you make the footprint smaller, then you make the staffing smaller. So everything becomes moderate. Because what people don't realise is, the more your wages are, the more your rent is, the more you've got to charge. So the people that are out there, and I talk a lot about this, that are saying, you know, double time for hospitality workers, no problems. Pay double for your coffee. Oh no, I'm not doing that. Well, then you need to be careful what you're asking for. Yeah. It's a numbers game, and that's where the future is going to be, and that's where the education is. What I'm working a lot on is helping people to know more. And a story around there is I've got a shared interest in Echo, which is one of the best restaurants in Brisbane. And through the whole COVID, what they did amazingly is they went into takeaway mode. Now, a leg of lamb with all its condiments in a restaurant would be between $90 and $150, depends where it is, right? They were selling at $65, and they were selling that much, it was crazy, and it got them through. People said, why is it so cheap? And they used it as the opportunity to teach the customer. Well, we don't have to pay 40% wages on this. So we would have to double that price to cover wages. So we can sell it for 65 because we don't have to sell it for 100 because it's not costing us 40% in wages. They use it as an opportunity to educate the customer of what the difference is when you eat in versus when you take out, which was great. Now that's why I'm talking about education. As the consumer becomes more educated on what they're engaging in, whether it's a car wash or a restaurant or a legal service or a dentist. You know, if you ring a dentist at 1 o'clock in the morning with a toothache, well, it's going to cost you double the price of going in business hours, right? And an emergency is going to cost you a lot more. And those of us that have got pets know, emergency is going to cost a lot more than everyday scheduled appointment. Because why? It's user pays. That's the system. So we need to be more educated as consumers and as customers. But as a person delivering a service or a product, you need to educate them. And if you do that, then you start to get this fusion.
The environment that we're in and this crash of the service sector provides an opportunity to educate the consumer more as to why things have been shaken up. Phil, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to leave listeners with just at the end of the episode, or rather before we get into the remaster?
No, I always appreciate and value having a voice. And if I can help listeners, one part of that or take some nuggets away from that, then I'm always up for it. To me, education is key. And as Gandhi says, be part of the change you want to see.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Phil. To finish up this little preamble for the remaster, if you haven't heard Phil before today, stay right there because episode 56 has consistently been one of our top 5 most downloaded episodes. And with the remaster, you're in for an absolute treat.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. No worries at all. I'm really excited to get into the interview today. As you know, the first question I like to ask is, what's your crazy hospitality story?
Yeah, well, there's a couple, but let's go with one that's coffee related, where I was actually a customer in one of our customers' cafes. So we supplied the coffee at the time to this venue, and I was there paying the bill. And before I paid the bill, there was a lady standing at the counter who was giving just outrageous coffee orders. And it was, I think it was a takeaway coffee at the time, because we're going back about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was decaf this, and half skim milk this, and half hot this, and a shot of caramel this. And it was about 6 or 7 coffees. And the person behind the register, as each coffee got read out, you could just see their face change colour, and they were fuming and fuming and fuming. And by the time it got to the 5th or 6th coffee, I remember the young girl, she would have been in her mid-20s. She's walked around the other side of the counter. She's taken off her apron. She's given it to the customer and said, "I suggest you go make your own bloody coffees because this is ridiculous." And I just burst into laughter. Probably not the best thing to do, but I just burst into laughter going, oh my God. I don't know who was right and who was wrong. I mean, they say the customer's always right, but I don't believe that's the case. Yeah. But I tell you, it wasn't 1 or 2 coffees. With every single coffee had a different element to it. And yes. In a normal situation, you'd say, how dare the person serving do that? But I tell you, you probably, validated. So that sticks out for me.
Totally. Thank you for the story. It's interesting, even your comments on that scenario, because I know that the customer and people are so core to your philosophy in business. What is it like? Is it the customer side that's more important, or is it the staff side that's
look, what I always talk about, it's both. It's people. And there's no secrets of where I stand. I always say that in life, business is not complicated, yet people complicate stuff. And from the onset, all we do in business is connect the person to a product or service. So in the coffee business or the hospitality business, what you're actually doing is connecting people to your product and service. And how you do that will be how you emotionally engage. And I often talk about coffee doesn't walk in the door to buy coffee. You have to be an expert in people. So the businesses that get it right, and it's not just limited to hospitality, businesses that get it right are the businesses that understand people. They understand how to attract people, they understand how to look after people, and they understand how to emotionally engage with people, leaving them with a positive customer experience.
So what is it that you've found in your experience that can really drive into that core emotional response into people?
Yeah, understanding why you're there for. This country's losing its ideology of being in service to people and thinks that other people are in service to us. And simply put, what I do with my teams, and whether it's here, India, New York, anywhere that I've got teams across the globe, I tell them that you are in service to somebody always. And to take that further, it's not what you can get from somebody, it's what you can do for somebody. And if you kept that mentality in your people, and again, it doesn't matter whether it's hospitality or any other industry, whether it's in a marriage, you see marriages break down because it's people, what they can take from each other, not what they can do for each other. We see it with parenting of kids. If it's all about what the kids can do for us versus what we can do for our kids, you lose sight of it. So that to me is the core fundamental of what works is, and a great way to motivate people is to make them understand that they have to be in service to somebody, right? And just like I'm in service to somebody at all times, they have to be in service to people. And that's what makes the ecosystem go round.
Yes, and obviously not just the hospitality ecosystem, but in business generally.
Professional, family and personal, it's the same philosophy that you need to be in service. We're always in service to someone or something.
Yeah, fantastic. So on a super, I use the term macro, on a super macro level, why do you do what you do? What is it that really drives you, inspires you?
Yeah, so my why, and that changes obviously as you go through life, but from a career point of view, they say the first one is obviously a job, your second part of your life is a career, and your third is your calling. And I've been fortunate enough now to move into my calling, as I call it. My first as a job was obviously washing washing dishes, learning hospitality from the ground up while I was studying at uni. That was a job. My career then became Dabella Coffee. My career became being a business owner and opening a business from scratch and building it to one of the biggest of its kind in the country, and then exiting and understanding that now I'm in the calling section. And so what my purpose is now, my why now, is really to see people accelerate their potential. The thing that really motivates me is seeing other people succeed. So that's not just in hospitality, that's not just in business, but that's also whether they're working for somebody or owning their own business, but at all levels, seeing people really grow themselves, grow their mindset, grow their capability, grow their vision, grow their passion. I really get a buzz out of seeing other people accelerating their potential.
Yes, I'm guessing seeing that growth or being involved in that growth as well. You're very involved in.
Yeah, well, I'm tangible. I like to see things. I like to see the product of the outcome of what you're doing. You know, when you're sitting down with somebody for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, or they're listening to one of your podcasts or your flashcast, or they're reading about you, or you're at a speech delivering a presentation, you hear the feedback and they say, well, I heard your risk management plan is about get comfortable with your worst possible scenario. Well, this happened not too long ago where a lady said, oh, I heard your flashcast on risk management and I didn't know at the time whether I should be changing jobs. It helped me make my mind up, and I'd been beating myself over a week over it. But once listening to your 10-minute flashcast, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I'd sat down and assessed what the worst possible scenario was. I got comfortable with it and I made my decision. That to me is tangible. I can see how I was able, as a personal brand, as a brand of Phillip Dabella, able to positively impact on her and accelerate her potential. You know, and I think my calling card, my brand aspiration is around Gandhi and being part of the change you want to see in the world, and you'll see it up in the office. That's mine. The other one is my wife's. The Oscar Wilde one is hers. You know, about being yourself because everyone else is taken. That's what she believes in, about authenticity and individualism. I believe in being part of the change you want to see. So whether that's politics, hospitality, whether it's schooling, education, whatever the it is, I want to be part of that in one way, shape or form, so that I can see, you know, people's growth potential and see it grow, see it accelerate.
Have you found that in a digital world that it's been harder to see those tangible changes?
Look, it's not harder to see it. It's probably more visible to see it. It just doesn't mean it's as authentic as it is. So, you know, if you wanted to get somebody to like you without the digital age, it took a lot longer and a lot more persuading and a lot more time, whereas now things happen a lot quicker. People can make their mind up about you very quick. But the level of depth isn't there. That's what's missing. You know, the Italians have got some great little sayings, and one of them is you've got to share a lot of salt together before you know somebody. Now with the digital age, someone puts a few photos up on their social media and all of a sudden they're a guru, or they're not, or they're handsome, or they're ugly, or they're smart, or they're dumb. People make generalizations, classifications and judgments so quickly. And part of that is because of the digital age. Funny enough, and this is one of my real, let's call it nuggets of wisdom right now, that people have said, hey Phil, that's a really deep statement and I want to share it because you're the first person I'd be sharing it with live on a podcast, is in today's day and age we have so much more resources than we've ever had, yet people are achieving so little. You know, if people started with a range of resources at level 5, they'd achieve a level 20. In today's day and age, we have a level of resource that probably starts at 20, but we're only achieving 25. So the range and the level of achievement is lower than it's ever been because we haven't gone on to accelerate our potential with the resources we've got. So one of my benchmarks that I always use to assess a situation, especially when it comes to people, is are they doing the best that they can at the time that it's happening with the resources that they have? And that goes for, think about hospitality. If you're running a cafe, running a restaurant, or you're a customer in a cafe or in a restaurant, before you go and make a judgment about the venue, oh, it's dirty, it's unhygienic, it's slow, it's not good enough. How about asking the following, using the following template? Are they doing the best that they can at the time that it's happening with the resources that they have? Now, that requires a level of what we call emotional intelligence, right? Because a place where the poor chef has fallen sick and can't come into work and they're one chef down, where the lady's mum that normally comes in to be the maitre d' has passed away with cancer and is not at work for a week, with then the delivery of milk didn't arrive, so someone had to run to Coles to go and buy it because the truck driver had an accident, may result in you not getting your food and your coffee and your service to the level that you would normally. Now, you'll either judge that as pathetic and poor, or you'll sit back and go, are they doing the best that they can with the resources they have at the time that it happens? And I'll give you a much clearer example. I never get shitty walking into a venue that is busy and I have to wait. But I'll definitely get shitty walking into a venue when the people are standing around talking and I have to wait. And that is a classic example of your brain automatically going into, is this person doing the best that they can with the resources that they have at the time that it's happening? So to reiterate, you walk into a cafe or restaurant and it's flat out, you won't mind waiting. because you're assessing the situation. You walk into a cafe or restaurant and there's 5 people behind a counter and they make you wait, there's a problem. It's a good little tool, to share obviously with the listeners, that it's a great way to benchmark and measure, not only just in hospitality, but in any business, but people. So are my children doing the best that they can at the time that it's happening with the resources that they have? Are my workers, are my colleagues, is my wife, my husband? You can change the people, but use the same template. And I find it very, very powerful to be able to just pause and reflect and assess the situation correctly. Because what's happened with the digital age is that we get so much data that is incorrect because we don't analyze it correctly. So it's not the data that's important, it's the way we analyze the data that becomes most important. And people are good at collecting data, but they're not always good at analyzing the data.
Are our tools for that data analysis changing?
Of course, it's always changing. The speed at which we can collect it, the depth in which what we can collect.
Do we need to, though?
Well, in terms of data, yeah, because the more data you can collect, the better. But you know what hasn't changed and won't change is the analysing of data. And this is controversial, right? But robots can't analyse data because they're programmed by somebody.
That's right.
So they're only limited to the programming. Whereas humans will always have the advantage of analysation if they can analyse. So what I teach, I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and can I tell you that the most important skill that they need to learn right now is the ability to analyse. That's where it'll be. Because functional stuff will be done by robots. Functional stuff will be done by artificial intelligence. But what won't be done is the analysing of data. Anything to do with emotional engagement won't be done by robots and AI because they have to be programmed by someone or something.
People forget that. People forget that it is ultimately the human component that defines it all.
Correct.
We program all the tools. We design everything.
Yeah, and automation's been around for a long time, right? Look at coffee. Coffee machines have been around for a long time. Starbucks spent millions and millions of dollars around automation, and then they pulled them all out because they weren't getting the level of customer service. They found that people didn't want to pay a higher price for coffee if it wasn't made by a person. Automation's been around for a long time, and that's the difference between data collection and data analysation. Being able to analyse that data and make the right strategy because you've got the capability to dissect it down and really hone in on what you need to do or not do.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that you obviously built Debella and you exited. That's a huge, I'm sure you've got whole seminars dedicated to that process. If you could really summarize a couple of quick pieces of advice you have, even if it's negotiating a sale or defining when you're ready to sell a business, whether someone approaches you or you approach someone else.
Of course. So step one, I'll give you 3 real quick tips because of course that discussion line could go for hours.
Totally.
1, you have to be ready. And ready means different things to different people. Ready to me was that I looked at my life personally, professionally, and family. And whilst I was kicking a lot of goals professionally, I did it tough with family. So I wasn't always there for my kids, and they were young. So it's not like I was able to change quickly. I'd put on a lot of weight. So personally, I wasn't healthy. I was high stress, high blood pressure. And from a family point, they weren't getting the attention that I wanted to give them and the time I wanted to spend with them. So the timing was right. Timing in terms of professionally is that we hadn't yet reached, we were number 1 in the country in what we did, but we still hadn't reached our full potential. So there was the right time to leave something on the table for somebody else, that somebody would see opportunity to grow further. So timing was right. The next thing is that you have to match with the right people. And what I mean by that is when the timing was right to exit, I had several people that were interested in the business. And of course, when you build a business and a brand from scratch, when you exit, you want to be aligned with the right people. And at the time, I had drink companies, I had private equity firms, I had people wanting to float the business, but the person that was most suited was the retail food group at the time. Now forget what you hear about the whole franchise side, that's a different division. But the retail food group approached me that they wanted us to be their first ever non-franchise acquisition. They wanted to play in the space of coffee manufacturing for independent cafes. So we were the right fit for them for the right reason that they wanted to grow. And they wanted me to stay on for the next 2.5 years and run it, which I did because I didn't formally exit till 30 June last year. And again, that's the coffee side of that business, not the franchising side of the retail food group. So I had to make sure that I was selling it to the right people. So step 1, timing. Step 2, the right audience, the right people. 3, which has been the most important part, be very clear what life after a sale looks like. And that's probably the most important. And I had some really good advisors around me. I used BDO in Brisbane to do my sale, and that was one of the first things that they sat down and spoke to me. What does life for Phil Debella look like post-sale? So that whilst we went through the process, I had plenty of options at the end on what I could still do. So being 43, I still want to work in the business. And one of them is now that I'm still consulting back to Debella Coffee, which I'm enjoying, and I've been able to still pursue new business ventures in New York and in India and stuff like that. And our raw coffee business being ICT.coffee. So I was able to do that. So to recap in very, very short is you got to make sure that the timing's right, personally, professionally, and family. You have to make sure that you're going to exit to the right people for the right reasons. And 3, you have to know what your life looks like post and exit, because you can't just get caught up in big check numbers and all the rest of it, because sooner or later it's not just about the money, you want to do something else. So you need to make sure that you don't sign documents or sign contracts that limit you, or that you know that you don't have anything else to go to because you don't have a purpose after business. So you need to do. So that's the 3 best things that I can give in such a short period of time.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned ICT. Ray's got an episode on the show a few episodes back as well from the time of recording this.
Fantastic.
I think it was in the late 30s. But on that, when you were building your business, did you have your exit in mind while you were doing it? Did you look for strategic partners?
No, I didn't. The last thing I was thinking was an exit. But then again, I never thought that I would build the size of a business that we did. And I learned a lot through that. By building Debella the size it was, showed me that when you go about growing something and it's not about the size of it, but you grow it for the right reasons, the size happens. And it's advice I give to people now when they're building a restaurant or building a cafe. I say to them, don't get caught up in the turnover numbers. You've got to know your numbers. Don't get caught up on what you speculate your revenue will be. Get caught up in how many happy people you're going to serve. How are you going to over-deliver on their customer expectation? Because that's true customer service. To me, customer service is over-delivering on someone's expectation. So, and to do that, you need to know what their expectation is. So make it about the people, not about the numbers. Of course, you've got to know your numbers, and the numbers will be a byproduct of the people you serve. Whereas I still hear a lot of people get caught up in, I believe if I open a shop here, I could turn over $30,000 a week, and it's got to be an 80-seater, and we're going to be open this amount of hours. Well, how do you know that area warrants 80 seats? How do you know there's a demand for 80 seats? How do you know that they don't want you to be open earlier and close later, or open earlier and close earlier? How do you know all this? You haven't made it about people, you've just made it about numbers. So that's the thing that a lot of people get wrong, is that they forget the human element of everything. And I always say, if you get the human element right, you can make mistakes on the other side. But if you don't get the human element right, no one's going to tolerate your mistakes.
I like that. Thank you very much. Through a lot of your work, you must negotiate a lot as well. Do you have any tips for negotiating?
Got some great tips. You'll see behind me, I've got a diploma from Harvard from strategic negotiation. And very simply, step 1, know your ZOPA, zone of possible agreement. So when you're negotiating on buying or selling or anything, know what the zone of possible agreement is. So what's the worst possible scenario? What's the best possible scenario? And don't play outside of that zone. 2, and this is extremely important, and I challenge listeners to be very, very conscious and aware of this after they've listened to this podcast, is that anytime you have a discussion with somebody, and everything's a negotiation, but anytime you're having a negotiation, a discussion, a talk with somebody, there'll be 3 levels that you're actually communicating on: power, rights, or interest. And the best negotiators in the world keep everything at interest level. And that's something I challenge, and it's part of my give back of being part of the change I want to see. Post doing the course at Harvard, I now am very conscious to make sure that any heated discussions or negotiations or conversations are taken back to interests and away from rights and power. And you'll see, just as an observer, listen, Google, YouTube conflict, and listen to 2 people having an argument, and you'll see that the argument escalates when people talk about rights and power, but calms down when people talk about best interests. So they're the 2 biggest tips I can give anyone around negotiation. Again, that comes from doing a course at Harvard University, which I'm very thankful and grateful that I was able to do. And they were the 2 top messages that came out of that. And It's an honour to share it with, obviously, your listeners. Yeah,
and thank you for sharing that. I read a book by 2, I think, professors from Harvard. I think it was William Ury and another gentleman. I think there were even 3 authors.
Jim Zabinius would have been one of them, who's the guy that ran the course. So Jim Zabinius is the guy that ran the course for the week that I got to study under.
It was Getting to Yes was the book
there we
that
go.
I read.
Yeah, that's Jim Zabinius.
Fantastic book. Just a quick question before I progress into the latter part of the episode. What does crisis mean to you?
Inability to make a decision quickly, or poor planning. And what I mean by that, of course there's going to be crises that you can't control. Look at the Lindt chocolate episode in Sydney. No one could control that, right? So crisis is broken down into 2. Controllable, uncontrollable. Crisis that you can't control is not, you can't do anything about. Crisis that you can control is not a crisis. So, and often when people say I'm in crisis, and I step 1, I go, Did they control this or they can't control it? If they can't control it, it's a genuine crisis. If they can't control it, the reason they're in crisis is because of poor planning and the ability to make a decision. So the key is, if you reverse engineer that, is you got to try and best plan for crises that you can't control. And I mean, I used to chair the CBD Economic Development Board in Brisbane. So when that lunatic in Melbourne let loose with his car and ran people over in Burke Street Mall, obviously that was a crisis that no one could control. So here in Brisbane, we looked at what we needed to do to secure cars not being able to drive on the mall, and we put the bollards. Now, they're not the most attractive things in the world, I agree. However, you have to give to get. And I would rather see a mall that has 1 million people a week walk it, safe, even if it meant that there's going to be some ugly temporary bollards, put up. So that's an example of crisis and then reacting. Now, had we seen that in Melbourne and not done anything in Brisbane, and it happened a week later, then that was the inability of making a decision quickly. That was poor planning, and that crisis happened. So, that's the way I look at the two scenarios.
Yes, and you mentioned being on the board there. Being in a position now where you have the ability to do that, what advice do you have for people who might be at a stage in their career where they're ready to reach out to boards and be part of it?
Well, I've sat on a lot of boards now over the years. So I chaired that Economic Development Board. I sat on the Brisbane Marketing Board. I've done Queensland Tourism and Events. I was part of the board that brought the Brisbane Bullets back to Brisbane. All sorts of stuff. I was the chair of judges for the Queensland Great Awards, Australian of the Year Awards. I've had some really cool positions and stuff. And they all come back to one thing. You've got to be able to dedicate a level of commitment and loyalty, but talent to be part of an orchestra. And what I mean by that is, one person alone doesn't achieve greatness. It's about we, not I. And so a lot of people go on boards thinking that they single-handedly are going to make a difference. You will not make a difference. You'll be part of the difference. So step one is to make sure that you are going to be part of a difference, so that you're joining a team that you can collectively make a difference with. Because I've said a lot of no's to boards where, as they've wanted me on there for one reason or another, but I wouldn't have been able to be part of a team to make it look successful, because a man alone can't make a business successful, or a person alone can't make a business successful. It takes a team. So identify that you're going to be part of a team that can make something happen. Then have a look at what your actual skill set is. And my skill set revolves around problem solving, strategy, branding, ideation. They're 4 very clear skill sets that I have. It's not legal and accounting. Yeah, I know a bit about legal and I know a lot about accounting, but that's not my area of expertise. So I wouldn't be the person you put on there for accounting or legal expertise. I'm the person you put there for problem solving, strategy, ideation, branding. So know very clearly what your skills are, right? And then 3, you got to be part of a cause you believe in. If you don't believe it, if you're not emotionally engaged with it, you won't give it your best. And I care too much about my personal brand to go and do something half-heartedly. I'm either all in or not in at all.
Thank you very much for the advice. What is it that you're learning about or exploring at the moment?
How to be a better father. Now that I got my wish, I work school hours. I get 10 to 12 weeks a year off. I try not to travel more than a week a month to be a better dad. And to me, being a better dad is helping to support my children, guide my children to be better humans, to understand their purpose, to understand that they've got to fall to rise, that they've, part of winning is losing, part of losing is winning. To understand that it's a journey, not a destination, that their life is all about a journey and it's all about being better tomorrow than today, and then some days you're just gonna have a shit day. To be able to have vision, plan, to be courteous and respectful to people, and to be able to be in service and add value to others, as well as add value to themselves. So that to me is stuff that I'm working on now, and I find that the better I get at that, the better leader I become, the better business person I become, the better human I become, and I find that the more comfortable I become within myself.
Interesting that when you like your answer to what you're learning about is learning about teaching someone else. It's totally. But obviously you've done a lot of teaching, but these are small humans who don't know much at all. So you go ground floor up.
Yeah, but often they know more than what we do, because why? They're instinctively smart. They're not book smart. Children are instinctively smart, and there is so much to be learnt from children. You watch the way children interact in a playground, you watch the way they avoid risk, you watch the way they jump into risk. There is so much to be learnt from kids, and which brings me to a point I often talk about is we just don't sit back and observe enough. We don't pause and reflect. So one of the things I'm working on, and especially taken from someone who's 100 miles an hour, is the ability to pause and reflect. And it was probably not something I was ever good at, well, most definitely not good at it, but something I didn't do often enough. Now I'm becoming better at it, and I try and do it often, is pause and reflect. And just observe, just sit back and observe a bit more, listen a bit more, observe a bit more, see what's going on, and which automatically means you're analysing more, which helps you then create strategy.
And on that, I think it's a good way to step into another question of mine around your creative process. How do you get into a state that really allows creativity to flourish?
Well, I find that I'm at my best creative self when I'm very comfortable, when I'm in control of what's going on personally, professionally, and family. Then the creative parts are going. Otherwise you get yourself into a state of anxiousness, and I don't like being that. I've suffered anxiety over the years, and it's not something that ever goes away. You just learn how to deal with it better. You know that, hey, you need to slow down and pause and reflect and do the rest of it. And that doesn't build creativity, that builds urgency. When I'm at the most calmest, when my life is in harmony, and not in balance, because I don't believe in balance, right? Nothing will ever be in balance. You won't have 8 hours a day to work on personal, professional, family. Sometimes your work needs dedication and you give it to it. Sometimes it's your family that needs it and you give it to it. And sometimes it's you and you give it to it. And when you're in a position to be able to do that, that's what I call a state of harmony. I'm at my most creative when I'm in a state of harmony. So over the 12 months, I've lost a lot of weight. I've had the good 12 months with my family, working school hours, and I've still achieved plenty of things professionally. So this would have to be my most harmonious and creative year ever.
Fantastic. Okay, and because I think about it as spinning plates, it's the same thing, just holding all the plates up. And so being in harmony, from what I gather, is you're describing it, that you have the ability to give what parts of your life require attention at the time they require the attention, so you have the resources available.
You do. You've got to give yourself the authority, right?
Yes.
You've got to give yourself authority to self-love, at times to be selfish, and oftentimes to be selfless. And knowing when to do that is only gauged by you. It also ties into a whole heap of other things, like, there's a great book written by Bob Berg, I think it is, The Go-Giver. And it's a small book and it's an easy book to read. And it's all about what can I do for you. It's all about how you can go through life giving, not expecting anything in return. However, what you're actually expecting in return is self-gratification. You're fulfilling your own self-gratification, which puts you in a state of harmony, which helps you be creative and make smarter decisions, all because you're giving. And it's something from a young age that when I read this book, I then reflected and went, I get excited when I buy gifts for people. So I get excited, from a young kid, I would buy mum flowers. I'd say to Dad, can I buy mum flowers? Yeah, sure, son. If we were going over to visit an auntie and we took over flowers and a box of chocolates, I would get excited about it. It's something that I really remember from my childhood, and it's something my parents really encouraged, was this whole, feeling good about giving. And my children do that. And it's amazing. They donate their money from birthdays to charity. So they give to Pajama Foundation, or they give it to the Royal Children's Hospital. They give their money they get given for birthdays to charity, and they feel good about it. If we go shopping, my son will often say, can I buy my friend such and such a present? Can I buy, my daughter will say, can I buy this book for my friend because she wants to read it? So, and I love that. I love that fact that that's cascading down, because I think that's a fundamental element of the whole be part of the change you want to see. That, in a world where everything's moving and spinning so quickly, everyone's becoming me. Everyone's becoming so, centralized and selfish, that it's going to take a lot of people that are completely opposite, that really live those values of giving, and if they're in isolation, then the world's going to become a problem, because everybody's just going to become ignorant and self-indulgent and self-involved. Then we're going to have problems.
How do you, I'm thinking about hiring versus, obviously you're teaching your children that giving is something that's to be rewarded, so you're incentivizing giving. But when you hire people, are you looking for that already, or do you retrain them?
I'm very well known in the industry. I'm very well known in the business community of Australia that I hire on attitude and teach skill. It's been a philosophy of mine from day one. I have the ability to do that because of the industry we're in. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to be hiring a doctor on the right attitude and teach them how to be a doctor, because it's not going to work. But the best example I can use is I've trained many of wait staff in a restaurant, and I see a lot of people hire people that have got a lot of skills in wait staff, and they make the worst wait staff. And what I mean by that is somebody that walks in and just follows the motions and says, now I will bring a bottle of water and a menu. I now will take your drink order. I will now deliver your drink order. I will now take your food menu, food order. I will then bring you the food and I will ask you for another drink. Becomes very robotic, systematic, and is rushing you. Whereas teaching somebody who has the most beautiful, vibrant personality, who knows how to read people and sits down and says, what can I do right now to make you put a smile on your face? I can tell you've had a hard day. Somebody that then walks in, knows that a business person has walked in and is in a hurry and a rush and wants their food. I just want to check that you're in a rush, because if you are, I'll make sure your order gets put through the express line, because you understand you might be busy. You can't teach this stuff. That becomes innate. That's all attitude based. And that attitude based is what emotionally engages with people. You can teach somebody a system, a cycle of service. You can teach them how to systemize and procedurize service. But what you can't teach them is how to engage with the person based on how they're feeling or what they would like.
On your journey, you mentioned you've had some people to advise you along the way. Have you had any mentors or people that you've really looked up to on your business journey?
Yeah, I haven't had any mentors as such, but there's a couple of people that obviously I'd like to mention. One is Alan Piper, who was the man behind AP Eagers, who passed away many, many years ago. And I got to meet him when I was working in the cafe business while I was studying university. He was a very wise man, and he came from humble beginnings, and he was, probably you could say a bit of a mentor at a time that I was doing it tough. Why my uni still? I could be out here earning real money, working longer and all the rest of it. And he really helped guide me. And I spent probably 6 months with him before I even knew who he was, talking to him. Because he'd come up to the cafe and I'd sit down with him sometimes 15, 20 minutes at a time on my break and have a chat. And of course he found out a love for cars, and then one day he told me what he does, and he brought in his bio, and then I looked him up and went, holy geez, one of the country's richest guys, was the man behind Austral Porsche and all this sort of stuff. He guided me a lot in terms of, the grass may seem greener on the other side, plan for success, make sure you're very clear on what success looks like, make sure that you understand that life is about personal, professional and family. So he was instrumental in my early years. My parents obviously had a big part to play. Being a son of migrants was big. So I learnt values and beliefs that I now see myself passing down to my kids. So my upbringing and childhood was very, very strong, because they didn't have a lot of money at all. Like my dad used to earn $450 a week. It was all about moments and not materialism. And that's, whilst I've made some good money now, to me I talk about life's measured in moments. I don't talk about material possessions. Yeah, I like nice cars and nice wine and stuff like that, but that's not what defines me. What defines me is life being measured in moments. And I remember that, because some of the best days of my life is being a kid running along the Sandgate Beach Esplanade with my dad chasing me and falling over and hurting himself because he was trying to beat me in a race. It's stuff that costs no money, but I can still remember it. I was standing beside him cooking a barbecue, stuff like that. So some of the most memorable moments, And then I was fortunate enough, and you'll see sitting behind me, I got to spend a week on Necker Island with Richard Branson. And I spent 2 days with Branson. We got drunk together one night. You could see by that photo, we looked pretty drunk. And we talked about the demise of Virgin Cola. He spoke about Virgin Bank, and he talked about all the rest of it. And he's asking me questions. I'm asking him questions. He's offering me if I want to open, espresso bars. And I'm saying, no, I'm not a retailer. I'm a manufacturer. And we just had a great chat for 4 hours getting drunk. And then we had dinner with 10 other people on the island. And he really shaped a lot of my belief around wealth. And the story I'll share very quickly is that he said, Phillip, the moment someone's worth more than $50 million, it doesn't matter what they're worth after that. As long as they, are worth that number, that's the magic number in his lifetime. And what he means by that is, once you're worth 50 million, you can buy any car you want, you can stay in any hotel you want, you can fly in the same seat of the plane that he flies in. The difference of him being worth 3, 4, 5 billion, whatever it is he owns the airline, so it comes with stress. I paid to be on the island, he owns the island. I've got less stress. I've got no stress, he's got stress. So it's something I learnt was, once you get to that $50 million bracket and north of it, a lot of people go broke because they're trying to go from 50 million to 100 million, 100 million to 1 billion, and a lot of people go broke and fall over. And I learnt, be comfortable with who you are, what you are. I also learnt something that I really talk about, enough money to do what you want when you want. So financial success for anybody doesn't need to be 50 million, doesn't need to be 100, doesn't need to be 1 million. Financial success to anybody is all about having enough money to do what you want when you want. So somebody who loves to stay in 5-star hotels around the world is going to need more money than someone who loves to travel in a caravan. Both are going to have amazing moments. Both are going to have great experiences. No one is better than the other person, just different wants. Therefore, they need different levels of dollars. Some people don't want to fly on a plane for whatever reason. Some people will only fly first class. Again, different amounts of money. So money as a resource versus money as a measure of success. And that came from Richard Branson, from me analysing out the discussion and the data that Richard and I spoke about. So that was a real good, call it a mentoring session over many hours. And of course, things I can't talk about that he talked about why, Virgin Cola did failed and why the banks failed. It was a really good, open, honest discussion. And then I came away with that going, this man is a human being with a good heart. He's very, very talented, and the best talent he has is his ability to communicate with people. And from that short interaction, I learnt a lot. So that's probably the three people that have had the most impact, So Alan Piper, my parents, and then that short encounter with Richard Branson. One thing I love to constantly do is I research businesses and case studies that fail. And I do that because I try and see why they failed and analyse the failures. And then, of course, one, try not to repeat the mistakes. But two, have a look at the strategies that I would have built to make it different. And I call that exercising my brain. So I actually love problem solving. I love looking at problems and coming up with solutions, because to me that's exercising my brain, that's keeping me current, that's helping me accelerate people's potential, it's helping me part of the change that I want to see. So it ties into what we call values. And I've got very, very strong values around care. So to me, care is one of the top. So authenticity and care are two of my top values. The ability to care for people. I'm in a better space now because I've been able to care for myself. So care and authentic, well, I've always been authentic. Those that know me will know sometimes probably too authentic, too honest. But again, better more honesty than not. But that is something that I've just got to be aware, because your strength can become your weakness at times.
Well, Phil, I'm conscious of the time, so I just have one more question. Who would you like to hear on the show?
Great question. I would love to hear, here we go, it wouldn't be the entrepreneurial spirit of me if I didn't answer it in a different way. I'd love to see a 45-minute session, broken into 3. Here's a challenge for you. 15 minutes on 3 different age group segments. So I'd love to hear from an 8 to 12-year-old, a 14 to 20-year-old, and then a 25 to 30-year-old. You could make the ranges bigger if you wanted to. So you might say, hey, let's hear from a 10-year-old, a 30-year-old and a 60-year-old. But the purpose of that is I would ask the same 5 questions to each generation, because I'd be so interested in the different answers and the scope of the answers.
Fantastic.
This program is hosted by James Henderson, with technical production by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, led by Stephanie Holland, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.